Holy shnikey, armed engineers, Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
And man, oh man, there's a birthday boy in the room. A Tommyboy, one could say. That's right, tonight we're celebrating the 25th anniversary of Tommyboy, the classic 1995 Chris Farley, David Spade buddy comedy, with a little dose of Brian Dennehy and Rob Lowe for good measure. Dragon, this is, of course, an iconic 90s cult classic comedy. Of course, it's infamously got a pretty low Rotten Tomatoes score, in spite of just the cult classic status it shares. I will admit, Dragon, just kind of going into this from a thesis point of view, this isn't a perfect movie by any means. I have fond memories of watching this movie in high school because my economy teacher actually used this as like a shorthand, like, hey, look, this is kind of the way that sales works. And so we watched this quite a bit. And actually, in my high school, the housekeeping, that was like a big running gag in my high school class. But anyways, so I definitely have a strong, like, this is always like a high school movie for me. This is always like, all right, this is one of the movies that the teachers would show us, much like something like Monty Python and the Holy Grail or Dr. Strangelove. Very much kind of like a movie that the teachers appreciated that could also kind of have some educational value to it. And looking back on it now, I will admit I do kind of see where the bad reviews are coming from to a certain extent, just because I feel like the movie can at times linger on the shenanigans just a little bit too much. But having said that, this movie has a huge amount of heart, man. It really does. I mean, the David Spade of it all is great. David Spade has simply never been better, except arguably as Cusco in the original Emperor's New Groove. But really, it's between that and this. I mean, it's really two peas in a pod in terms of great David Spade performances. And Chris Farley, of course, has a lot of has a lot of range, a lot of warmth. You love him. You kind of get aggravated by him. I feel like maybe you get a little too aggravated by him at certain points in the movie. We'll get there. Of course, Brian Dennehy is a great father, a classic 90s dad, if you will. Rob Lowe is just a really cheesy, over-the-top villain. I love him. I think I like him more now as an adult than I did when I was a kid. So, a lot of stuff to appreciate about this movie, Dragon, for sure. And look, it's even got an Aykroyd! So, alright. What are your thoughts on Tommyboy?
So I got a lot of love for Tommyboy. Tommyboy, one of the quintessential comedies. It's kind of a best of sampling of Chris Farley's comedic work, but also, very importantly, also a little more. So there's a little more there about it. Again, that's what I think. I love that there's always a little bit beneath the surface of Tommyboy. It's kind of this perfect tribute to Chris Farley, and it's kind of like not just the perfect tribute, it's like a perfect tribute of Chris Farley at his kind of his phantasm level. It's kind of his most perfected and polished state in many respects. This is kind of like him. We kind of take all the wonderful things about Chris Farley and we kind of like put it into a movie that kind of reflects a little bit of his life, but also kind of him at his peak, kind of woven into a narrative. Okay, is it a narrative that's going to light the world on fire if you really look at it with a fine-tooth comb? Probably not, but again, as like a movie, just like your classic road movie, and it's Chris Farley as kind of your grounding element, sure. It basically is like one of those movies where all the stars, both literal and figurative, mind you, come together on this one to make essentially for us. This is kind of like I might be speaking for you a little bit here, but for me, this is kind of like the Caddyshack of our generation. In many respects, you hear always the classic movie for the 80s was Caddyshack, and for us is kind of like our very much like in regards to the comedy that everyone knows, like the comedy that everyone sees,
I hear you.
Kind of plays on TV a lot, that sort of thing. In that regard, it's kind of like the Caddyshack for us that was for our kind of our prior generation, and so on and so forth. And it's one of the road movie buddy comedies for the ages. For me, it's one of the. I mean, again, like it's no Muppet movie, mind you, but still, it's like it's one of like it's such a rewatchable film.
I love that Emperor's New Groove is also a road movie and a buddy movie.
Exactly, and again, big thing. You don't get Emperor's New Groove without this movie.
Sure, sure, of course,
That's
of
what I'm saying. I
course.
love the legacy factor of all of
Yeah.
that here. I mean, it's such a rewatchable film because it's always on. It's always fun. I always loved catching a few minutes of Tommy Boy because it's something kind of magnetic about it. Again, yeah, again, 95, you get this and you get Toy Story with an iconic buddy movie pairing, which is quite fun. It's kind of these two
Hmm.
fun
Hmm.
kind of pairings, 95 big year. So many iconic bits. It's quoted by the masses, myself included. I always quote the whole son of a whenever I do like the whole son of a, I'm always thinking of Tommy Boy.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah,
how can you
right.
not? That holy schnickeys, it's fantastic.
Shut up, Richard.
Shut up, Richard.
Dragon, if we don't end on that line, then we're doing our jobs wrong. I just want
Yep.
to put that into existence right now. So, all right. So what's the background you got on this thing, buddy?
Background's really, really interesting. It's really fun, really simple though. So this is directed by Peter Siegel. Peter Siegel, he had built a name for himself. We covered one of Peter Siegel's movies a little earlier on Movie Memoirs this year. He did My Spy this year, but he had built
Oh,
kind of a
yes,
career.
yes.
The idea is, I think Tommy Boy's like the high point of his career in many respects. That's like the one that kind of is most beloved and most kind of like recognizable. But he started with the Naked Gun, one of the Naked Gun sequels. I love the Naked Gun franchise. The first one's the best. He did the third one. That's kind of when the Zucker brothers they pass it on to somebody else. So he kind of came in with the third one. He's done movies like 50 First Dates, which again kind of like seen by a lot of people. And again, he's done some infamous. I'm not going to list the infamous because we're going to focus on the positive here. He's done My Spy, so the guy's still got a little bit there. And again, just at least for like the kind of the audience pleasers.
My
And it
Spy
doesn't.
was fun, man. That one was underappreciated for
That's
what
what
it
I'm saying.
was.
My Spy is fun. Again,
It could
maybe
have
the
been a
plot.
lot worse given the premise.
That's what I'm saying. Again, the premise looked a lot more like it was going to be a little bit more disposable. My Spy, at
Like it
least it
was
was.
going to be like a oh god, what was that stupid movie last year about the firefighters?
Oh well, no. Yeah, I know you're talking about. It's something. The John Cena movie about the firehouse. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
exactly.
I can't even be bothered to look it up, but yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. It looked like it could have been something like we take like a big kind of a big guy and we pair him up with with kids and we like mine the comedy. Where this My
Looks like
Spy.
something the pacifier and the game plan, but My Spy was a little bit better than that kind of
That's what
fare.
I'm saying. And again, that's like Peter Siegel has like a crowd pleaser factor. Even if some of the
Right.
movies aren't like he did the Night Professor too. That's what I'm saying. Stuff like that, where again, at least the
Professional
crowd.
is a good example of it's a crowd pleaser.
Yeah,
Nobody's like holding it up as like high art, but it's fun.
exactly.
And
So
honestly,
basically,
I think the same thing can be said for Tommy Boy. I mean, it's like we can't exactly call Tommy Boy like mesmerizing cinema or anything like that. You know what I mean?
no, but
It's
it
just
is
a
something
damn fun
special.
movie.
Exactly. It's a fun movie and a little something special. So Siegel, he was on a mission. Very simple. Peter Siegel was on a mission, almost like a mission from God, to quote the Blues Brothers. But he was on a mission to direct Chris Farley's first big starring role. Because Chris Farley, with the SNL movies, he'd been popping up in them, like in little small roles, cameos, supporting bits. I love him in Coneheads. I forget. I think Coneheads came out before. I think Coneheads was '93. So that was point being. So he's popping up in Coneheads like a small support role. That's how you get Dan Aykroyd in the movie later on, stuff like that. So essentially, the premise was okay. I'm gonna do Chris Farley's first starring role. It's a goal I want to do, and essentially for the course of the movie, I'm gonna work in like nods to his greatest SNL bits throughout the film. I'm gonna weave them into some sort of narrative.
Okay.
A big thing to note, really historic thing. Chris Farley was sober for this film. He had
Yeah.
very infamously,
Right.
he was dabbling in a lot of stuff, and he kind of Lorne Michaels kind of forced him to clean up to get back on SNL and to do stuff like this. And this was kind of Chris Farley kind of coming back strong. He kind of was like I can't call it his prime, but he's like in a renewed prime, which is really great.
Sure. Sure.
Adds a special quality to the film, just kind of like the age old testament of like, man, this is the good that was in him. It wasn't all just like artificial. It was like he was there, man.
Mhm.
So the original title was Billy the Third, a Midwestern.
Nice. Nice.
So you can imagine there was another kind of SNL alumni who was doing a Billy-related movie at this time,
Sure.
Billy Madison, which presented a bit of a problem, and they had a whole bunch of other
Right.
crappy titles like Fat Chance and XL, and
Oh, Fat Chance! Oh no! Oh
that's what I'm saying.
God!
The three titles I think people know about, Fat Chance, there's XL, and there's Rocky Road. They almost went with Rocky Road.
I
So
don't
like
even
there were
like that
posters.
one, man. Rocky Road just sounds really generic.
Yeah, they got so close. They were posters of Rocky Road.
Oh no! Oh no! Did it have like David Spade and Tom and freaking Chris Farley in the car and everything like
Well, pretty
Rocky
like that. Like
Road?
one of them standing on the car, and then they spit. Like it was not anyway.
Oh god!
So the point is, Lauren Michaels
Ooh,
comes
look,
in for.
prehistoric forest. Sorry. Go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead.
So Lauren Michaels comes in for the save. He says like, let's call it Tommyboy.
Uh, and
And
man, like in retrospect, it feels like such a natural title, doesn't it?
it does. I can't
Like you
explain
can't
why. I
you
mean,
can't think of it any other way. I mean I can kind of explain why. It's because I feel like the movie is all about legacy and fatherhood and wanting to live up to, to a father, to what your father wants from you, and at the same time being your own person. Like, I don't know. I think Tommy Boy's a very appropriate title thematically.
I think the logic too for like where does Tommy just in the name come from at all? I mean, Chris Farley's father was named Tom Farley,
Uh-huh.
so I assume maybe Lauren Michaels is pulling a little bit from there. I mean, I can't verify that might just be coincidental, but an awesome coincidence. Regardless, you're right though. It
Yeah.
does feel the boy element of it all absolutely ties it together. So,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, one other big thing to note here before we get on is that there was a lot of rewrites on this movie. I mean, a lot of rewrites. As in, this was like it's amazing this production came off as well as it did because there were script changes and everything. Mainly to the third act was almost completely on the fly.
Ooh, I have things to say about that third act, buddy. We'll get there.
That's what I'm saying. Like the original, so like the original drafts, you had different pairings. It was a little bit more of like Tommy and Paul's movie. A little bit of it was Chris Farley and
Oh
Rob
man,
Lowe.
that's interesting that you mentioned that because when Paul first shows up, of course,
Mhm.
he's got that big memorable like intro, like, "Hi, I'm Paul. You must be Tommy." And you
Yeah,
honestly kind of think these guys are gonna have more of a dynamic than they end up getting. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Because initially, I assumed the idea was a little bit more Drake and Josh esque. It was like, hey,
Right,
here's your new
right.
brother, and it was a little bit of that mixed as a little bit like again going for the Chippendales effect. We have like the two, the good looking guy, and we have this the energy filled one that everybody loves.
Uh-huh.
So, but basically, what they realized is, of course, they have Farley and Spade in the movie, and their chemistry was so, they're so fantastic. They kind of changed the course of things. And the idea is like, while they're on set doing the movie, that kind of inspires the rewrites. Because basically, this thing's like, imagine a movie where you rewrite the script the night before each day, practically, or like the
Oh,
weekend before.
right.
So that's kind of how this was. And again, going up to like the last minute, pretty much shot linearly because of that. And they would write things in that basically Chris Farley and David Spade would discover on the day. It gets written into the movie.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
it's again,
Okay.
it's very. I can't say it's not improvised, but it is kind of improvised off the set.
Sure.
So yeah, it's of course as Tiki alluded to, it did not get good reviews or good at the box office at that time, but it became really one of the, it became a must-own home video release
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
rose to the iconic status
Probably
that it has.
probably made video stores a bunch of money with people just like re-renting it over and over, I imagine.
Certainly. Yes, and of course, becomes the rises to the iconic cult status that it has today to become a household comedy name for 25 years, and we're talking about it now.
All right. Okay, so let's get into Act One. We have, of course, the opening with the kids that just perfectly sets up the Richard and Tommy dynamic. It's so economic with it.
Yeah, we set up that's a coming of age story with this, and we see how Chris Farley brought his boyhood antics to adulthood, which is pretty much kind of how his comedy kind of emanates from.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love how like cosmically this character he kind of makes it's almost like remember that line in Bruce Almighty where Jim Carrey's talking to Morgan Freeman and Freeman says yeah you make me laugh like your father, that line.
Right.
It's kind of like that. Like it's almost like cosmically, this character makes the universe laugh. Therefore, we give him like these little wins. We put him through the ringer. That's kind of what we demonstrate through the kid being chased by the dog. He's missing the bus and everything, but he still makes it though, but by the skin of his teeth. So it's like there's a relatability to what Chris Farley did for this character. Slash again, kind of an allegory for himself here, where there's struggle and feeling down on yourself, like, oh man, I can't get in the door, and then somebody else pushes the door where you've been pulling the door, stuff like that. It's like we've all had those moments of stupidity, but it's like that moment of frustration. That's kind of like I think kind of the nexus of like what kind of like so relatable and kind of like the connecting point for a lot of people in some regard.
Hmm. Two things with the flashback with the kids. One,
Yeah,
like I said, I love seeing young Richard. I think it's just a great A great foreshadowing of
And he's on
of
a
their
bike,
dynamic.
which again, he has a
Yeah,
prized vehicle.
right, exactly. The first, shut up, Richard. And then, and two, Dragon, how good is the transition from, the bus pulling off into,
Smoke.
yeah, right. Isn't that a good transition?
It is. That's what I'm saying. It's such a that originally was this whole sequence was not in the movie. It originally started with him at the college, but that's what I'm saying. It's just it's great. It's such a the transition is magic, and also my favorite little detail. This is what I'm talking about, like cosmically the universe once they kind of lets this guy win one. Is that all the kids on the bus are saying, "Come on, Tommy!" They're not making fun.
Yeah, for sure,
and it's like,
for sure.
That's the thing. Everyone's rooting for this guy. Again, he's like
it's like the antithesis of the opening to Raimi Spider-Man.
Sure. Yes. Exactly.
It's like Raimi Spider-Man if everyone was like, "Come on, Peter, you can do it. sit next to me, Peter."
Yeah. I feel like this girl turning him away, and like the donut guy turning him. Everyone's turning him away.
That's
the thing. I love that. Basically, we set the tone perfectly for Tommy as a character. Where again, he's kind of an idiot, but he's an idiot you root for because because of the core heart shows through.
Sure.
Because he's got a good heart.
So we get the college antics with him, which are over very briefly, thankfully, because as
but the Herbie Hancock bit tells you everything you need to know. Basically he's over the moon for the D+. D+.
I don't like to give away that grade. They give away D- a lot more.
It's just hysterical. I love these little bits where he just grabs the guy. He says, "I wish we known each other.
I wish we would have known each other better." All right. So then we get the Big Tom setup of it all. Dragon, did you know that there's a survivor named Big Tom?
I do now.
The more you know. All right. Anyways, so Brian Dennehy, man. Oh my God, I forgot how much Brian Dennehy steals the first act of this movie, man. He really does. He really makes you care for this character.
Yeah, Brian Dennehy is Big Tom Callahan. He is, to me, and this is why I was so glowing about him when we did our little mini eulogy for him during memoirs, because fortunately he passed away this year. Is that Brian Dennehy as Big Tom Callahan? He is the magic X factor to the film.
I think so.
He conveys so much loving and patient. He's so loving and patient with his son. He conveys so much with so little. He's supportive and accepting of Tommy's flaws. It's like
at the same time, he's got his own kind of like fun eccentricities to him.
He does, and you get to see kind of the legacy effect there. You get to see where Tommy gets the energy, and he gets it. Basically, what I kind of came away with is that Big Tom is basically Tommy now, but basically his energy is there, but it's reduced and he brings it out when he needs to, but he's a more reserved with like Tommy's all kinetic energy. He's like Big Tom's building up the energy,
Right.
He's like potential energy versus kinetic energy. Anyway, so I love the unconditional love this man has for his son, and again, a lot of this coming from Chris Farley's close relationship with his father and idolizing his father very much kind of conveys, and again, it's a big kind of like fun little retroactive thing about the film as well, is that shades of Chris Farley's life yet again through this really big core element of the film. Dennehy, he brings so much credibility and. He brings so much credibility because he showcases his business savviness so well in the first act, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a great setup for for how he's a great salesman and kind of like the the salesman that Farley needs to aspire to be. It's really clever foreshadowing and exposition without feeling like foreshadowing and exposition.
Yeah, there's a lot on this character's shoulders where this guy has to represent the family, the company, the legacy, the whole Tommy Boy of it all, but also like this guy's the heart, basically represent the business, Callahan Auto, which is the heart of Sandusky, Ohio. If the company goes, a large, it's like the things that happen like the Flint, Michigan, and everything, and when all those factories and everything go away, that's sort of terrible. So again, you convey so much history and a threat to the workers that we only have like a scene, really like a scene with the workers when we get to know everybody. But again, because of the legitimacy we've earned here, you feel and you want. That's what I'm saying. We're doing so much with so little. And again, the movie, while not super deep, and they don't really have the time to get deep with everybody. Again, they're paced so well in that regard because of this, and again because of the emotion conveyed within the performances.
Sure. Like everyone in that opening scene, even though they only have like a beat, like a little beat a piece, they all feel memorable and lived in,
Absolutely. One other thing with Big Tom is that I got here before is that again, like for me, he's like one of the all-time dads, one of the all-time movie dads. Again, he only has an active screen time, and it can again like one of the examples of him conveying so much. He gives that fun look to people, especially like Richard when they do like the chubby gag, like after that heartwarming moment. Says, "How do we look chubby?" You know, if you look on Brian Dennehy's face, he does this a couple times in the movie. He gives this smirk of like it's not like an angry. He's not angry at him. He's not giving like a go away or anything. He's just giving like a smirk, like okay, very funny. He's just giving that perfect.
Right. Yeah,
Again, that's
totally.
what I'm saying. If the unconditional love of his son does not, his son maybe is not living up to his full potential, but he just loves having his son around him. It's like it's beautiful.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
All right. You want to wait until Act 2 to get into the Paul stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah. We're going to save all the Paul stuff for Act 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you want to get into the wedding then?
Yes, wedding, huge, big scene. So I love the tender scene that we get between Tommy and Big Tom's the branch kind of breach the branch.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have one more thing to say about the
sure.
stuff with the factory tour and all that.
Yeah,
the bit where Farley's messing around with the cranes, like the crane hooks.
Yeah.
I will admit that that's a little. There's two bits in this movie that kind of wear on me a little bit. There's that, and then there's one other bit that we get in the initial Paul brother bonding scene that we'll get to, where it's like, okay, Farley, all right, you can rein it in just a little bit, and the hook scene is one of them. All right,
gotcha.
Go ahead with the wedding.
All right, so yes, the wedding. So again, I love that the wedding is such a great centerpiece to the movie, in that we have this really tender scene between Tommy and Big Tom about. Remarrying, and it's beautiful little scene. I love
how man, I love this. It says so much with so little, doesn't it?
And again, it's like a father's hesitations with her because he's having trouble. Like he's not like saying he's not like obscuring like the fact that he loves his son or anything, or like loves like the whole thing. He's like I love he's searching for the words. Like that's the detail. He's searching for the words, and he's not. But Tommy gets it. Because they're feeling the scene out to each other here. It just they basically want each other's happiness. And my favorite details, I love how Richard he gets to see this scene before he enters the scene.
Yeah, totally.
Again, he's like the surrogate son to Big Tom as well. And he's kind of there too. And again, there's such humanity in the minimalism of that scene. It's just two guys kind of talking in front of a mirror. With David Spade's kind of off to the side there. Again, it's so wonderfully put together. And again, we're getting so much. Again, I love the other really cool thing about getting Brian Dennehy. By the way, of course, Brian Dennehy, very famous for Death of a Salesman. So again, being the salesman, quite funny. Just it's. Anyway, yes. So now we also have like details again in terms of the writing of the piece. I love that after the wedding we have like the Richard with the video camera, and this is a great device for some natural plot exposition here. I really appreciate it. Where we see Big Tom again. He's doing some salesmanship, like get some like gin and tonic, get some like a whiskey sours in this guy. It says like I'm 8 whiskey sours in, I can still outsell the SOB. Like stuff like that. And importantly, we keep setting up the importance of the brake pads, which of course are going to be the reason for Act 2. And we're doing it really naturally and through him and establishing kind of the legacy Tommy has to live up to being. And something we should probably hit now too is a little bit of Michelle.
Yeah, and Michelle, I don't. Dragon, I will admit, I'm a little mixed on her. On some level, I do feel like she's kind of like the stereotypical, like the character written in just for the main character to have a love interest. I don't really feel like Tommy needs a love interest in this movie by any means. But having said that, I do like that she's our kind of like eyes on the ground at the factory while Tommy and Richard are away on the trip, and I like how she works into the low of lows of it all. So I don't necessarily think she's wasted, but I do think it's a little bit of a product of its time of like, okay, oh my god, we need to bend over backwards to make sure the main character has a love interest and they kiss by the end of the movie.
Sure, but again, the important takeaway is that at least they had chemistry together. It was kind of nice, and it's only a couple scenes. And again, importantly, we have that scene for a really important scene coming up. So that's mainly why we have that in there. But I love during the wedding thing we have like this little adorable thing, which is Michelle, say a little something to the camera. I love that. I love when Chris Farley does like the professional like interviewee sort of thing.
Dragon, also, I forgot a fun little piece of trivia about this movie. So, Dragon, remind the good folks what the town this movie is set in is.
Sandusky, Ohio?
Sandusky, Ohio. That's right, Dragon. Do you know what famous theme park is in Sandusky, Ohio?
Tell me.
Cedar Point.
Ah.
So yeah, so when I eventually get to Cedar Point, I will be like, "Hey, I'm in Tommy Boy territory.
You're in Tommy country.
I'm in Tommy country." Right, right. So that's an interesting little piece of trivia for you.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right.
Okay, so now we got to talk about the best, debatably the best and most memorable choice in the film, which was Big Tom's death scene.
Mhm.
This is the reason people. I think this is where like we elevate the movie to the cult status with choices like this. It was such a bold but memorable choice. My God, this we have like the high of highs moment with this musical celebration
Sure, sure.
with Tommy and his father doing a duo, kind of like doing a duet on stage after the wedding, just celebrating this high of highs moment. Chris Farley doing some dancing comedy, a little bit of the old Chippendales gag there. And the dichotomy of these opposing emotions is fascinating to me, where we have just like this again, just this high versus versus just the crushing mortality of life, just the surprise of a low that just happens. Where oh my God, so you're at the high of highs, and so you literally turn your back and your father's dead.
Mhm.
Just crushing and just scary and sobering. But and again, the the moment where again like we realize this and like and just like the music stops, we go over and we have that haunting transition where we all clamor around Big Tom, and then as the actors move up, we transition to the Amazing Grace on being played at the funeral.
It's another wonderful transition, man. This movie's full of good transitions.
Absolutely, and also again, big thing with this again years later. Again, I shouldn't. Well, again, a few years later. Again, this movie wasn't aware of it, but again, another haunting quality movie, allegory for Chris Farley's fate. And again,
Of
just you
course.
think it's this high of highs, and then just it strikes and it comes out of nowhere. It's the fleetingness of life. Again, a bold move for a comedy, and just that amazing grace. Because again, just that you would fear losing your audience. Like it's going to get those uncomfortable laughs, don't you think? Of like, wait a minute, is it going to be like, hey, he fell down or something? Like, no, he didn't fall down, folks. This is serious. They'll hide the kids.
Yeah.
Well, don't hide the kids. This is life. They need to see
Yeah,
life.
exactly, exactly. I was gonna say.
Yeah, you're yeah. Again, but it was a bold move, and I'm so glad they stuck with it. They didn't just like do like a halfway thing to make it a joke.
Like where he was in a coma or something like that.
Exactly, and we see Tommy like walk home very solemnly, and again, like, they let the moment breathe, and they let you feel the moment. And again, I love how we have like the two sons moment here. We have Tommy at the grave, but Richard giving it some distance, but also effect. That's what I'm saying. It's a beautiful, the beautiful small choices of the movie really sing. Speaking of which, we then go to the boat scene, which this is absolutely the emotional centerpiece of the film.
I mean, it's good. It's a good foreshadowing to the ending. I'm not a fan of the dinghy joke, just because I feel like it's a little tonally out of place.
Really, you didn't like the "Stop Playing with Your Dinghy"? You didn't like that one?
I think it's like I said. I think it's a little tonally out of place, Dragon. Honestly,
Well,
that's
he's
the only
reflecting
issue.
fondly on his father. It's on his father. With I don't know.
I know, but it's just a little crude. I don't know.
Well, fair enough, I guess. And anyway, this actually
Subjectivity when
happened
it
to the
comes to
director.
comedy, it happens.
This happened to the director, by the way. He went sailing on a boat once and got stuck, and the kids made fun of him.
God. Oh, the kids in this scene are wonderful, and Michelle, easily Michelle's best moment is her going off on the kids. Like that's the moment where I'm like, all right, you know what? Like, yeah, I could see Tommy ending up with this girl.
And again, it's that great chemistry. And again, what I really loved about the boat scene, why I kind of go about the whole emotional centerpiece thing, is that again, this feels like I always cite this Pixar mode. It's like the seed moment from A Bug's Life. Again, we're deflating the schmaltz. We're deflating the whole like it's this is a sea, but it's a rock. No. But imagine that it's a sea.
Right,
That's
right, yeah.
deflating. We're deflating the schmaltz of like this moment here where it could be like, okay, they're reflecting fun. Again, we have the kids making fun. We have like a genuine moment of bond in between these two. But again, that breathing moment right after they were like, oh, I'm gonna miss my father, and then of course then we insert the comedy, but it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel jarring. It feels natural because of that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Let's see. So again, also the stuff like this helps keep Big Tom in play after the passing as well. So again, again, the boat is an idea which comes back later at the end to it. That's the main. Anyway, imagine how hard this is to shoot this Tiki though, because they have to get a day on the lake with no wind to do this. Otherwise, there's going to be a big problem.
Oh, yeah, that I didn't even think about that, but that's a good point.
And the lighting and everything, and getting
That's
out
bad
there, and again,
logistics.
yeah, it's crazy. They had to reshoot this too, so they had to like do it twice and wait for a day with no. Oh, it's crazy.
All right.
All right.
So moving on to Act 2, we have the series of no's, which is pretty straightforward. I feel like this movie thrives in the montage to a certain extent, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's a lot of information across in a short amount of time. Shows that Tommy is very bad at the fight. He's very bad at the hustle. He's like, okay, thanks, see you later. Thanks for your time. Alrighty then.
Okie dokie. That's the thing. So of course
I can totally relate to this. By the way, Dragon, I have a really hard time, like not accepting no for an answer. If you know what I mean.
I hear you. Of course, with all this, we enter the road movie element of the film as well, where again it's the son on a journey to literally, well, in a sense, become his father and sell the brake pads, which were the legacy. So so basically he needs to do so. To do so, he needs to grow up, which leads to the necessity of his opposite, Richard, a.k.a. the wonderful David Spade. So again, they're like brothers in real life, David Spade and Chris Farley, which again, it translates so well to film. And again, as I mentioned, inspired certain ideas and just these great bits along this road trip. The innocent versus the jaded wise guy. It's just that, your Cusco-esque figure and just this big lovable goof.
God, in so many ways, this movie does kind of mirror Emperor's Groove. It really does.
Certainly. So, right. And again, I like the necessity here. Where again, Richard knows the product, but he's not a people person. Versus Tommy, who loves people but lacks the knowledge and the confidence of his father, which leads to again the series of like the trial and error of that montage, which again is fuel for Tommy when basically This is basically what Chris Farley did during the Chris Farley show, where he lacked the confidence during those interviews, which he lacks the confidence during the sales, where he's just like completely bombing it. And of course, landmark scene, the toy car demonstration.
Dragon, I actually just saw a Facebook meme about this scene where it's basically like, like a historian in 50 years trying to explain 2020, and it just shows like Chris Farley with the toy car on fire. Oh, God. This had to have been improvised, right? At least partially.
Well, I mean, partially because again,
it very much reads as like them just kind of like giving Chris Farley the floor and just being like, go nuts.
Pretty much. Like, I don't know if they had like extra cars or anything. I want to say at the very least, if they knew, they know what exactly he was gonna do. I'm sure like they gave him some leeway for sure. A part of me I want to say he was completely like they didn't know he was gonna do any of this with the cars. I want to say that actually helped.
Right.
Honestly, I really think it's like they just had no idea and he was like randomly smashed the cars. And I knew he improvised lighting it on fire. That was improvised. Little Bobcat Goldthwait in there for Chris Farley's lighting it on fire. But yeah, it's such a memorable, iconic scene. Which again, importantly though, what I love story-wise, again, it's him trying to find his own sales pitch, which eventually he does. But right now, this is literally the crash and burn version of that.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of cars and the destruction of said cars,
oh boy,
let's talk about the Plymouth Belvedere.
So what I love about this is, I feel like in the 90s, in this era, there were a lot of comedies that tried to have really memorable vehicles, right? Yeah. And this is almost kind of like the inverse of that.
Yes, I know.
It's very memorable. Right. It's very memorable, but for all the wrong reasons, it's just like, oh, God. Yeah. It starts with M&Ms in the dashboard and just gets worse and worse from there.
So this is where I deconstruct the deconstructed car. So get ready for this. So this is so the car is a symbol for Richard and Tommy's friendship, and also the car. It's a car, therefore parallels Callahan Auto as well. Again, the auto. Again, you want a car to symbolize this because again, the whole movie's about parts for cars.
Of course.
So, you know, it's basically we're destroying the old guard and the old status quo to make your own way, which essentially is Tommy Boy's journey, which is what the car is doing. We're smashing the old way, the old conventional way. Like, this is a car fresh off the assembly line. We're selling the parts, not the car. So we don't need the full car.
I never looked at it like that, but yeah, I can see some merit in that argument.
Now, the real thing that it's doing here, very simply, is it's a symbol for Richard loosening up and accepting Tommy's flaws. That's the main take. The rest of it I'm reading into. This is the actual symbol. It's basically Richard loosening up and accepting the flaws, which of course the car becomes very flawed by the end. It's also a powder keg buildup, with everything to them having their big fight. And of course, the whole prehistoric forest stuff.
Oh my god, the prehistoric forest is one of my favorite moments.
So the car is like the powder keg to get to the prehistoric forest.
Right.
Which again, prehistoric forest in itself, just like written out of the Route 66 and all the fun road
stuff. Of course, yeah.
How can you not love it? I guess. For years, I forgot until rewatching the movie. I forgot that no, the diner isn't in the prehistoric forest; it's near the prehistoric forest.
Right, yeah.
I just assumed it was the same place because, like, oh, there's a prehistoric forest. But point being, it's
prehistoric forest.
He's so excited and deflated by it. By the way, that's Chris Farley taking a real hit with that wood. By the way, he did not want a stunt double suit. And here's the thing: they hit him with the wrong part. There's a soft part of that board, but they hit him with the.
Oh no! Oh god!
So that mark may or may not be real. That's all I'm saying. So again, of course, the car being the symbol for Act 2 with the road movie as well. Okay.
So we have the diner, we have Chris Farley having a very, very empathetic pitch about why he should be served chicken wings.
Okay, this is my favorite. My favorite parts of the movies are like the winning sales pitches and the chicken wings, particularly here. I love Chris Farley, the salesman. I love him relating his troubles to another so well. And again, this is like the energized version of the Chris Farley show, where he would do the interviews. But like, what if we took that and mixed it in with like a Matt Foley, if you will? We have like sure. Matt Foley. He really becomes Matt Foley in one of my other in the Guarantee Fairy. We're gonna get there, but I just love the whole JoJo the Idiot Circus Boy thing. Like, Helen, let me tell you about something. Let me tell you why I suck as a salesman. I think I have a shot, and I become excited. Like I'm JoJo the Idiot Circus Boy with a pretty new pet. And he grabs this roll of bread. This little bread roll, and he's just and he massage it. My naughty little, you're naughty. Nobody says you're not. It cracks me so. And then he's like, and then I basically almost does like a Lenny from of Mice and Men moment.
Yeah.
And they massage it, and then I go, oh, I killed it. And everyone's looking at me. I killed myself. That's why we got to forge ahead, Helen. It's perfect, and again, it's this perfect metaphor for stress and a lack of confidence, and it's hilarious. You know, it's nice to see a win for Tommy, isn't it? It's nice to see this epiphany of like how he can sell and basically make the salesmanship his own, because he's tried using his father's slogans and he's crashed and burned horribly with the butcher analogy.
Oh God. Right.
So he's using his energy to channel into the sales. Of course, the Guarantee Fairy. How do you feel about the Guarantee Fairy?
Guarantee Fairy. I don't know, man. I mean, at this point in the movie, it just becomes really likable. You know, just this whole section of the Farley success. You know, it really does just like it blends together for me in a good way. You know what I mean? It's just like, all right, good things are happening. Right on. Happy times are here again.
I love the way you put that, but yes. Now I'm hearing the song in my head, but that's great. So yes, what's up, I love that he just has this wonderful. Basically, again, I love that was the chicken wings was the epiphany, and now it's like the birth of a salesman versus the death of a salesman. With the literal death of our salesman. Sorry, dumb joke. But I think I love that now he's on the upswing, and now he's perfected that sales pitch into like, what if the Guarantee Fairy is a crazy glue sniffer? Model airplane, says the little fairy, but we're not buying it. Next thing you know, there's money missing off the dresser, and your daughter's knocked up. I've seen it 100 times. It's insane, but hysterical. Let's see, some other memorable bitches to hit here, like Fat Guy and Loco. We got to talk about Fat Guy and Loco.
Fat guy in a little coat.
Never a song
in a little coat. I mean, what more needs to be said, really? You know what? I will cite the part of the movie that has by far aged the worst. Dragon, can you guess what it is?
I guess it's the pool scene. Am I correct?
Oh yes, oh yes.
See
That I
why
mean,
I left it off of the thing.
I'm sorry, Dragon. We have to address it because as likable as Richard is in this movie, it's an elephant in the room to be sure.
Well, to be, yes, yeah, you know,
No,
now
it's creepy, Dragon. Come on, don't
it,
try to defend it. It's just
no, well, yeah, I'm just saying now it would never fly on, now it would never fly. But again, like, come on, what is she thinking out there too? Let's be honest.
Oh, I know, but still, he's not helping the situation at all.
And like, to be fair though, Tommy doesn't let him off easy with this. Really, he has this like this great runner, like some runners. I love how overzealous he is. Like, you think she's a fan of the Yankees? Like stuff like that. It's crude, but it's hysterical. I love the moth gag too, because the moth, it's just so funny. And yes, they look like fake moths, but it's funny.
All right, so then we get to, hi, I'm Paul.
Let's talk about the low of lows, as it were, low within 8 kids.
Yeah. So first of all, let's talk about Paul and Tommy's bonding scene, which the cow tipping is great.
Yes.
But I will admit, Dragon, the hose scene where Tommy's singing "Maniac," it's a little much. It's a little much.
Again, that was like an idea, like they had, like, hey, why don't you do this? And of course, he ran with it. He put a full energy into it. And again, I don't know.
I'm just saying, in that moment, I'm kind of on Paul's side, where I'm like, who the fuck is this guy?
I mean, again, he's being sprayed with a hose, and it's like they're coming out of the A. I don't know. It's kind of funny.
Anyways. But yes, Rob Lowe. I mean, just the whole conceit of him, of him being the so-called son of the woman who's trying to marry into the family for the business, and then them having this like really openly, I mean, public displays of affection, guys. You know what I mean? If there was ever a movie that was an argument for public displays of affection, or against it, I should say, it's this. Oh God, yeah. It's Dragon. It's so silly and wrong in the most '90s kind of way.
That it is, and again, the idea of like being running this con on them running this con on Big Tom, and again, I love how this drives Tommy later on, where it's very simple. It's that they lied to my dad. That's what motivates him, because again, that's the betrayal. Really, it's not even like the whole like the gamble, like, oh, we're going to steal money from him. It's like they lied to him, because again, I love that it's because of that earlier scene. It's the whole, he just wanted to meet somebody because he was tired of being alone. And how would you not root for a guy like this? Oh man, and regardless, it's just that deflating. That's the thing that really gets Tommy's good. Like, my father, he tried to look for happiness, and they kind of pummeled that, and that's what he can't stand with them. So what I like is that Paul and Zelensky, and we'll get to Zelensky when we get to Act 3, but I love that Paul and Zelensky are kind of like negative versions of, or more cynical versions of Tommy and Richard, where Paul is like the cynical version of Richard. Or the more, the more irredeemably cynical version of Richard.
Sure.
He's the pretty boy antagonist. He's the he's the horrible escalation of Richard opposed to Tom. Like, what if Richard was completely irredeemable? Like, literally, like when we have this great introduction to Paul too. Remember when Paul shows up, he's like hitting the window with the kid, and he's throwing like this little carton of milk into a baby carriage. The man's evil. And he gets like a lot of wily. I think
that he's like a classic like evil '90s villain. Yeah. Who's just kind of like unabashed about it. You know what I mean? He's a jerk and he rebels in being a jerk.
That's what I'm saying. He's so unabashedly '90s foe when you really look at it here. Where like he sabotages like the '90s computer system,
right?
To lose all the sales, and poor Michelle's on the hook and everything. He's basically spoiling that. And then he has like the Wile E. Coyote, almost like Home Alone-esque kind of mishaps, because of the karma and everything, when he's messing with the plan. And of course, I love David Spade had an improvisation that Rob Lowe still remembers to this day. It's really funny. Lee Harvey, when he calls him Lee Harvey Oswald, because if you actually look at Lee Harvey, he looks a little bit like him with the hairstyle and everything. It's really funny.
See it. Yeah.
So that's the thing. I love basically the idea of Paul is he's like the brains behind the scheme. To rob Callahan Auto, basically, and dissolving the company, selling the Zelensky and everything there. I'll admit, though, the only flaw I have is that Paul is mainly saddled with the plot. He's saddled with the
I wish he had You're right about that. Yeah.
It's not again, not not in an offensive way. Let me put it this way: I think the plot here goes better than it does in something like My Spy, where again, at least the plot's simple and again, it's not complicated. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel, and it plays. It's it's just it's not quite a knockoff of anything, but it's
Sure.
just basically okay. Here's the plot stuff, and we're trying to dress it up with Paul getting injured, Wile E. Coyote style. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
it's about it. Not much there.
All right. Of course, with the low of lows, I do like that Michelle is kind of caught in the crossfire, and I like that we set up her, her no files organization system, and that it kind of like means a lot to her on like a personal OCD level. So when Tommy was like, "Why couldn't you have just used the files, Michelle?" Like that's a slap in the face, and we feel that. I think that was well set up.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so Act 3, Selensky time.
Yes. So we have this plane ride to we go on the plane ride to Chicago. You get from point A to point B. Again, we can't drive everywhere, kids. This is where the road movie becomes an air movie for a brief period. We have the great comedy duo of again Spade and Farley here, and again Spade doing his snarky flight stewardess safety spiel,
Right.
with Chris Farley as the physical comedy doing the physical comedy here, demonstrating. Of course, he grabs.
I honestly feel like this scene right here, it's not the most heart that they have in the movie by a long shot, but it might be the most on point they are as a comedy duo in the whole movie.
Certainly. Of course, the only thing that survived from the original draft was the bathroom changing gag, where basically they're in the
That's a fantastic bit of physical humor too.
Yeah, that's him just like tearing like a bull in a china shop in a, a little airplane. Again, I think we've all been there in some regard. Like, yeah, I've never had to change in an airport bathroom. Definitely not now. But
Oh boy, yeah.
but that's the thing. I can imagine it would be a nightmare. It does look rather confined. I imagine, especially in the '90s, given that confined it probably was even then.
Sure,
It's
sure.
simple, but it works. The whole the gag. It's simple, but it works. Big guy, little space. Pretty funny.
That guy in the little coat.
And again, as Chris Farley, many people have said, that in the world of comedians, the shorthand for stuff like that. Again, yet another Chris Farley, but Fatty falls down. That's what that's what
Right,
it was.
right, exactly, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of the less. It's like the less catchy cousin to Fat Guy in a Little Coat.
God, all right.
Because you can brand Fat Guy in a Little Coat.
Oh,
Everybody
you
loves Fat
can
Guy.
absolutely.
And
That guy in
again,
a little coat is the kind of meme that you do like a 10-hour loop of on YouTube.
I'm probably telling you something you already know here, just for the novelty of it. I love that he would do that when he shared the writing. It's basically his office in the writers' room with him, David Spade, Chris Rock, and Adam Sandler. He would try on their jackets. He didn't sing it though. That's what made it iconic here. He sang it, made it catchy. He would just say, "Hey, Fat Guy in a Little Coat," puts it on, and rip. Anyway, okay, so now we're meeting Zelensky, the real star of this movie. We're talking about Zelensky, played by the wonderful Dan Aykroyd.
Dragon, is this like one of Dan Aykroyd's last movies before he really started to go off the deep end?
I'm trying to think of this thing. For me, a lot of the SNL kind of movies that he would go on to do kind of blend together in terms of when they came out.
I mean, there was like Blues Brothers 2000, but I don't consider
I
that.
want to say 2000 is probably the last point before he starts getting overindulging in the whole crystal vodka of it all. I don't know.
Okay.
The point being, I'm assuming this is close to Coneheads, hence the whole reason he agrees to do the movie, because he likes working with Chris Farley and he worked with him there. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, Dan Aykroyd, very fun in the role. I like that he's a rival, but a friendly rival. A very respectable rival.
Yeah, like he's not a mustache trolley bad guy, but he is.
Exactly.
He's basically. I love the divide though. I love we keep building up in these commercials in the movie, especially in Act 2, and it's like, oh, Zelensky looks like a nice guy, and like, oh, look, there's his billboard and everything. It's like, where Zelensky seems like, I make American car parts for the working man because that's who I am and that's who I care about. I think he's got a great slogan. Looks great. He's got good hair. It's like, oh my God, Zelensky's awesome, and it's basically like this wonderful moment where Tommy, he shows up I love he just randomly is in the elevator with him too. I just love it's just like it's the little crossover point in our movies and our stories. Here's everything falling into alignment where it's a don't meet your heroes moment, where we have the wholesome front of this guy, the wholesome salesman just being kind of stripped away, and we reveal he's not a bad guy, but he's too good a businessman. This is like we've seen the family and legacy, mom and pop oriented business in Callahan Auto. This is like a guy who's developed that into big business. He's completely divorced himself from caring about every little person in the factory. This guy's he's too big to fail, essentially.
Sure.
And again, just not even a really good business. He wants the name, very Ray Kroc-esque. He just wants the name.
It is pretty Ray Kroc-esque, absolutely.
And again, he's very charming. I love that he's very charming and respected. Because again, I'm still charmed by the guy, even though he's giving this bullshit.
That's the thing. That's the thing. I don't really consider him a villain at all, Dragon. He's just a businessman, and he, as a businessman, he's going to use businessman type tactics. I mean, that's there's nothing inherently wrong with that.
Precisely, and again, he's such a great kind of he's like an eye-opening version of Big Tom, where it's like if Big Tom wasn't as is kind of like more like I don't want to say wholesome, but I mean like mom and pop, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, so then we get into we're starting to get into the Act 3 climax of it all, where we're kind of at this point is where we're actually basically once we get to the floor of the Zelinsky building with the auto plant, the little test, the brake testing element of the whole thing. All that's all seat of the pants. Like they originally they wanted to do this thing. We're at Wreck Callahan Auto and we ride the truck. Like Tommy frees the trucks to go out and make the deliveries or something. Did not have the budget for it, so they were flying by the seat of their pants. Then we get stuff like the boardroom bombing gambit.
Oh, speaking of things that have not aged well, Dragon, I was shocked. Talk about something that I just totally repressed from high school, buddy. I didn't remember this at all.
Here's I just love the excuse me gag where he just grabs everyone just speaking. Chris Farley speaking loudly here. Excuse me, and they all like, oh god, someone's trying to rob the place. Like it's dog day afternoon. Like no, he's trying to get some attention.
I think the funniest part of it is that the bomb at the end of the day really doesn't even end up mattering. It's just he's just using it as a means to make a sympathetic speech.
I love how if anyone got a close enough look at it, they would see it's completely harmless, where it's just flares, duct tape, and a watch.
Right. But still, it's a little weird in today's climate.
It is, but again, especially then, I mean, it would grab the news, it would grab the headlines, it would work. That's the sad thing.
Oh, God. All right.
Okay, let's see. So Tommy, he uses Zelinsky's persona against him to make him I love how he kind of legitimizes Zelinsky's commercial persona here on the news. Versus, well, you make working man and everything. Because Zelinsky is the idealist for the working man.
Oh.
And Michelle's brother, that whole plot line, the donut gag came back. The whole, we used to steal donuts from the safe.
I like that. Yeah, it's a very economic screenplay for sure.
Yep, and we had some shenanigans with Paul in the crash test area. That will ruin his week. Another great line from the Spade too. And you can completely improv Zelinsky walking away with Beverly at the end there. Bo Derek. Oh, by the way, Bo Derek. Yeah. So you know what's crazy?
What?
Bo Derek rocking her short hairstyle. Because her husband told her to cut her hair short because they didn't want her when she comes out of the pool like she does in the movie. They didn't want her doing the James Bond thing, which is like the hair wave. I guess it's like a money thing or something. They didn't want her it's crazy.
All right.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, unless you want to just get to the ending.
Yeah, let's do it.
So yeah, the boat was a perfect call at the end.
It was.
This perfect final note to hit, don't you think?
Yeah, it just kind of leaves you with this feeling of man, that was a nice movie. That was a really nice movie. I know that's a lame word for it, but I can't think of a better word. You know what I mean? It's just that was pleasant.
It's like measured whimsy.
Went on.
It was measured whimsy, not
too
whimsical.
That term. I like that term. That's good terminology for it.
Not too whimsical, was not too sappy, and yet again does the Pixar thing where
I feel like Forrest Gump kind of goes too far into the sappy territory where this kind of reins back just enough. You know what I mean?
I keep flip-flopping on the feather thing from Forrest Gump, but
I think it's a little too sappy myself, but that's a different argument.
Well, you see my point. Is again, just to show we're not drifting off, you folks. There's a wind-related point. So I love that he gets the wind. I love it's so perfect and perfect on note in that it's Tommy sitting there. He's become his father on his own terms. He's out in the boat alone. He's going to meet Michelle for dinner. But I love how like fine he is. And again, he's starting to reserve his energy like his father did. It's like he's starting like. I love how passive he is. Where you know what, if you can give me some wind, that'd be great. Otherwise, I'll just sit here. It's fine.
Yeah.
He's content with it. He's not overreacting. As he's not putting too much energy into it like he did before. And again, he has the perfect note where he gets hit in the head by the thing, which is just right. Against the universe showing like we can't let him change too much. We can't end without him getting hit on the head. And like son of a can't do it without one more holy schnickeys, as it were. Because without it, he loses the humor, and we lose the humor / heart mixture, which is the key to making the whole thing work. We miss like the deflated schmaltz. We got to deflate the schmaltz, which we do, and we go home happy.
All right. So final thoughts on my end, Dragon. Like I said, this was very much a kind of like a standard in high school. I feel like everyone in my high school class knew it and quoted it. But watching it as an adult, it definitely has a lot of heart. There are a couple moments here and there, but they're very few and far between where I'm like, all right, Chris Farley might have gone a little bit too far comedically, a little bit too broad. But other than that, I feel like it holds up really well. I think David Spade and Farley just bounce incredibly well off of each other. Rob Lowe is in full-on 90s villain cheese mode. Brian Dennehy is the heart of the piece, to be sure. It's just all together very humble and well-constructed, and just a nice little movie that stood the test of time, for the most part, barring the bomb stuff.
All right, final thoughts for me, just kind of stuff on the legacy overall, just to reflect on that. I mean, it's a comedy institution of a buddy movie. I feel it's like maybe it's not the lead on the Mount Rushmore of the buddy movies, but it's there. The stay power comes from the heart that a general audience didn't expect. I think that's why this thing stuck around as long as it has. The reason it's worth celebrating, because people just. Everyone you talk to, especially I keep hearing comedians like or people like Rob Lowe or Bob Saget, like on the Joe Rogan podcast, they would talk about Tommyboy as it would come up, and they'd say why the movie works so well. And again, like a general audience didn't expect the heart, and that the unexpected heart in those moments, like the death of the Brian Dennehy of it all, and and Tommy on the boat and everything. It's the fondness years later develops from that, and that's where the cult following comes from. Like you don't get David Spade in The Emperor's New Groove without something like this. One could argue, in many respects, Shrek doesn't get traction without this, because again, original voice for Shrek, Chris Farley. Model for Shrek and Donkey originally was Farley and Spade. Mm-hmm. So I mean, after Tommy Richard. So a beautiful quality that this film is just proof. The beautiful quality to this film is that it's proof that comedians are always questioning about their talents. Like, do we have to have this big party lifestyle with the drugs and the drinking and everything? Is that what makes me funny, or is that my secret X factor? And I love that this kind of answers it in a really nice way. Like, no, he had it in him the whole time. The answer is, he didn't need it. All you needed was, he had the right director, the right cast, the right project to give him a chance to shine and show off a side that people didn't always expect to see from him. That Farley had range. That's the biggest takeaway from all this. That Farley had range. Hollywood saw this. Hollywood kind of tried to emulate this for a while. They tried to rip off Tommyboy with stuff like Black Sheep, the knockoff with Chris Farley and David Spade in it. It's like stuff like that. That's the tragedy. It's like it was too late by the time they realized he could do more. And it's a comedy classic for everyone, and it's absolutely just one. It's a lovely film. It's a lovely, funny film.
All right, thanks for watching, folks. We've got one more anniversary for you. For some reason, August kind of randomly turned, there was no real theme month for August, but it kind of turned into hey, look, we got a lot of anniversaries dropping on the same time. Let's do that. So, got one more for you before the month rounds up. Thanks so much for watching, and see you guys later. Ooh, look, prehistoric forest.
Shut up, Richard.